Hello and welcome to Literature in 60 Minutes. My name is Zandile Pooe. Thank you so much for joining us. We are yet again going to chat to an awesome author tonight, and we have Siya Phoenix Zenani, who has written a book titled Beyond Broken. And I believe it's a double title. She also refers to us as Beyond Okay. So it reflects a before and after image of her life and where she is now. But October is Mental Health Awareness Month in South Africa. And the 10th of October, particularly, which is this coming Sunday, is World Mental Health Day. So I believe that it is important for us to raise issues about the subject of mental health and why people sometimes struggle with issues of how they get depressed ever so often, they abuse substances, there's substance abuse, there's suicidal thoughts, there's so many other things that they are confronted by and have to deal with by virtue of the challenges that they experience with mental health. And I believe this book is more than fitting for Siya to tell us her story and her journey of how she has struggled with depression and mental health and had to be admitted and the rest of it, just so we can all maybe identify and maybe recognize parts of ourselves that are similar, and we can get ourselves the help that we need. We can pray, we can read the Word of God, but we can also go to therapy and process some of the things that have happened to us in our past, in our childhood, some of the traumatic experiences that we've gone through, and how they translate and manifest themselves in how we behave and how we act. But that interview is coming up right after the break. Please stay tuned.
Marching to the beat of the Lord. Zoe Live Radio. The abundant life experience.
Welcome back. Like I said earlier, we have Siya Phoenix Zenani, and she is the author of Beyond Broken. I came across her book on the socials, and it was quite interesting to see that it is already like hot off the press, but it's flying off the shelves. Welcome, Zenani. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, welcome, Siya. Sorry. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Zandi. I'm honored to be here.
It's such a pleasure to host you because I've followed you for quite a bit now, and I also got the heads up from I think someone we know mutually, Ubongiwe Hobololo. She's actually one of the people who said to me, "You must get a hold of this lady. She's written a great book." So it's such a pleasure to host you and to hear all about it, even though I don't have my hands on it yet, but I'm definitely going to get myself a copy. So you can introduce yourself, tell people who you are, and then we'll get right into talking about your book.
All right. Okay. As she has said, my name is Siya. That's the name I go by. My full name is Siya Ndiswa. But yeah, people know that. So it's Siya Zenani. I am an author of Beyond Broken. I'm a transformational speaker. I'm a conversationalist, and I'm a life coach as well. By day, I'm an application developer. So all the other roles that I've mentioned are more to my purpose in life. But yeah, career-wise, I'm a girl in IT. I'm a mother of 3, and I think that sums up who I am.
Okay, Phoenix. Where does Phoenix come from? Because I know Phoenix's rise. So how did it come across?
It's a struggle name.
Yeah, we all need those, eh?
It's a struggle name. It's a name I had to. It was more of a title more than a name, actually, that I picked up as I was rising from my ashes. I think, honestly, if I were to title my book in the most correct way, it would be Rise from the Ashes of the Phoenix, but it's just that there's so many of them out there. So yeah, it's my rise from the ashes. That's where it came from. It's what? It's a 4-year-old name somewhere there. Yeah.
So Beyond Broken, it's catchy, but what's behind the title?
What's behind the title is number one, it is 2 titles into one. If you get hold of the copy, you'll see it's beyond broken, but the okay sticks out. So it's beyond broken, beyond okay, which is a dichotomy of those two titles. What's behind it is the fact, number one, I have lived with my brokenness, even though I seemed to be okay, The second, just at it, is the fact that I've moved from a point where I was beyond broken to this point where I am beyond okay. So, yeah, that's where the title comes from.
Sure. Okay. So it's like a before and after snapshot of your life. Wow. Okay. So it's sort of like a semi-autobiographical story about your life, what you've been through. Yes. So I think you can just take us through. You talk about the school of life, just right from the beginning. So what has the school of life taught you?
The school of life has taught me to know when to speak up and when to be silent. And it has taught me that it is possible to go a full circle, if we're to speak like that. Part of the things I speak about in the School of Life, that is chapter 1, is that I grew up in a home where my mom was being abused. And I took a stand against my dad and told my mom to leave him, completely. And I also go to the fact that at some point, my children had to sit me down to say, you don't have to be this miserable in life. You can leave this guy. So it was, for me, it was a full circle of where I've been and where I have somehow put my children in the same situation that I was in.
Sure. And I think it's something that we all dread, isn't it? Yes. The fact that you grow up in an environment that is less than ideal and you are fighting it with everything that you've got. And then you yourself later in life thinking you'll make better decisions based on your background, but you end up finding yourself in a similar, if not the same, if not the exact same, but something similar to you, to the background that you come from. Sure. So how did your mom respond to, did she end up leaving your father, or what was the outcome of that?
She did. She did end up leaving my father. And more than anything, it was based on my counsel and my brother's counsel, because we had watched her leave him, then come back, leave, come back, and until that day where we said, what, it's okay. You don't have to do this for us or anybody. You just do it for yourself because we want you alive. So
sure, I can imagine just how liberating that is. See, that must have been so liberating for her, because I think a lot of us, I'm not speaking from experience, but I think a lot of us would want to see our parents happy sometimes.
Exactly.
And they stay in relationships for us thinking, just for my children, I can endure this. But if you as the children are being harmed more than helped by her staying, then sure. Okay. And in your own situation, are you at liberty to share what then transpired for you to end up walking out?
Yes, I am at liberty. That particular week where, you read about it in the book, but the particular week where my children sat me down to remind me of how happy I've been in life and how miserable I was at that point. A whole lot of other things were happening. But the conversation I had with the children influenced me more to the decision of leaving, because I faced my demons, the fact that I had to eventually beg my mom to leave. And now I was dragging them through the same situation. So I was like, if I don't leave, I am recreating my childhood in their lives. Yes. And they will also continue with the same pattern, with the same horrible rut that I found myself in. So it was up to me to say, let me change the narrative. Let me give my children a better future and the generations to come. So the decision that I needed to take was not just for me or not just for them, but also all the generations to come, depending on that one decision. So I left.
Sure. And now you talk about disturbances in the inner camp. Take us through that.
There I go back to my childhood. I didn't have the best of childhoods. I mean, okay, obviously, partly because of the abuse and the fact that my dad sold alcohol for a living. So I grew up in a shebeen. That's a very unstable childhood. And the fact that in all my mom leaving, coming back, my childhood was spread between 2 villages and in essence between 4 homes, because when I'm at my dad's house, there is his house and then there's his home where my grandmother stays. Same thing with on my mother's side, there's where we stay and then where my uncle stays. So I would find myself in between 4 homes, so to speak, and that's very unstable. And in all that instability, I also found myself being sexually abused by a very close cousin of mine.
Sure.
My that is now at my paternal grandmother's house. So the disturbed regions of the inner map stems from that from the beginning, things were not okay, And if we were to look at it from a psychology point of view, it's not surprising that I would find myself now as an adult struggling to deal with myself because my childhood issues were never dealt with.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sure. So that, at what age did the sexual abuse occur?
Around 11.
Oh,
sure. I was 11.
And the response, were you able to?
It's something that I buried. I kept it in me and sort of pretended as if it never happened. Partly because I felt ashamed. It felt like I did it, I was part of it. So I was very much ashamed until the perpetrator brought it up when I was around 18 in a way of a family meeting. Which he called because he had suddenly decided to be Mzalwane. He had become a new convert. So he felt he needed to confess his wrongs. So in the family meeting, he did not apologize for abusing me sexually. He said that he apologizes because we committed incest. Me and him. So
which implies some kind of consent on your part.
Yes.
When he includes you in that incest, it's like you were a part.
Exactly. Yes. And then as a by the way, he was like, hey, by the way, if I had to, I'm sorry. So that's it for 7-8 years. It's something that I'd chosen to really forget about until that day, and now it came back and it became a fresh wound, and I had to deal with. But I also, even from that day, I never really dealt with it. I think on that day, I forgave him for incest. I didn't forgive him for sexually harassing me, for raping me, as a child, until I became an adult and really understood what he had done fully. And now I had to begin the forgiveness journey from the point of understanding fully what he had done.
Sure. And unraveling yet again as to the emotional devastation that comes with that. Because even though you may have closed it off, shut it out in your mind, but when it comes back as fresh as it possibly could have happened. Sure. And
there's nothing that you can truly and fully hide. No emotion that's buried will remain buried forever. At some point, you just have to deal with it.
Is that what led to the silence that you referred to in your third chapter? Yes,
that's what led to the silence. They say silence is golden.
In this case.
But it's not always golden. One of the things I wrote about in the silence, I want to read it quickly. It's when I'm talking about the meeting, the family meeting that we had. I said that the adults who were supposed to ask questions were silent. Silence is golden, they say. But when silence is used as a way to avoid something that must be dealt with, it kills your self-worth. When there's silence in place of comforting words, lives are altered forever. There should have been an apology and a promise, but there was silence. There should have been an acknowledgement of the wrong and declaration of the truth, but there was silence. So that's the silence that sometimes as adults, especially in charge of children, we are more interested in protecting the family name and protecting the relations in the family more than getting to the truth. The people that were in the meeting should have asked questions, but they didn't. They chose to be silent.
Ask questions is another thing. They should have been angry. They should have had some kind of outrageous response that is commensurate to just the damage this thing has done to you personally. And I think this is a story that is so important, because I truly believe that it's one of the reasons why most children don't talk. And even when they do, they are not believed, because there's a shroud of secrecy that sometimes surrounds sexual misconduct in homes, as well as abuse, like blatant, outright abuse, sexually as well, of young girls. And it speaks to also, the kind of value that we are ascribed in society, as a young girl, especially depending on the type of tribe, culture you come from, there's just these connotations of women being, second citizens. Second
class
citizens. Exactly. We are second class citizens. And it's heartbreaking, because then if we are in the century where we should be able to let our children speak and be heard and be understood. Okay, and their feelings validated, to say this thing was wrong, this thing was not supposed to happen to you. And, there needs to be some kind of punishment, for lack of a better word. We can't just let people also get to that point where, oh yeah, now I'm ready to confess, therefore I'm sorry. And that's it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And everybody's life must just go on.
Like you were a minor, a child, not even, a minor.
I was a child.
Exactly. And this person violated you. And now that they've decided that, and which is good in and of itself, to say they came to that point where they wanted to say something about it out of guilt or whatever emotion was driving them. But it's something that out there, we are talking on this platform, but someone out there may be listening to say, if your child comes forward and says something, validate their feelings and understand.
Validate them, I think what shredded my self-worth was that silence of nobody acknowledging how I felt, or even asking, how are you, with everything, how do you feel now? Or how can we help you? Or anything like that. And even the person who was seemingly confessing, they were not declaring the truth. They were not saying exactly what happened. They twisted it to suit them. And the silence that follows after that is the one that makes you even question your sanity. Am I the one who's crazy here? Maybe I'm the one who has the wrong version of the story, or something like that. And your self-worth, your value, or whatever, in that silence is shredded into pieces.
Okay. And from that silence, you moved on to new beginnings. What are those new beginnings? What were they for you?
New beginnings, I'm now going to varsity, first person to go to varsity at home.
Yeah. That's a big deal. Very much a big deal. Yeah.
And I get to do a course I've never even heard of. I get to register in computer science because I'm one of the smart ones. And life turns, it becomes a very much new beginning, because in all my life, I had never touched a computer, The only time I had an access to a computer was in matric. Even then, it was so much guided because I was entered into a maths competition by my then class teacher. And so she would have to say, okay, this is the computer, this is how you type. And if the answer is 74, you just put 74 like this. That's as far as I had got to go as close as possible to a computer. So for me to register a computer science course, degree was a wow thing,
And you made it through, you graduated, you did the whole thing. You are that girl.
I'm that girl. So part of new beginnings is that when our new life is beginning, and I have to move away from home, spend 4 years of my life in a different town and meet new people, get into Adventism. This is where I became an Adventist. Okay. At varsity, yes. So that's another part of new beginning that I got introduced to the Adventist faith and I loved it. And part of the new beginnings.
So how did now coming into a relationship or coming into a religious environment, one, but also establishing a relationship with God, help with your transition from your, self-worth issues to now realizing what God says about you and who he says you are?
I wish I had a good story to tell there, but I don't. I don't think I really understood God. I don't think I really understood what he says about me. As much as I went to church and all that, and I had this relationship with him, but I don't think I fully understood who he says I am in his word until much later in his life. Mm-hmm. Because even though I was very active at church, I was very religious, very active at church and all that. I was on the extreme side, that those who don't wear pants and whatnot and whatever. Mm-hmm. But it was more of religious duties than a relationship with him. Mm-hmm. And I thought I had a relationship with him until much later when I realized that, it's all been a religious performance. It wasn't rooted in a relationship with him. So, but again, to be honest and to be fair, getting to know new people who love you for who you are, even though they might not know fully who you are, it did boost my self-esteem. It did boost me in a way to say, I'm loved and accepted, and it doesn't matter where I come from and all of those things. I'm loved and accepted by these people that have just got to know me. And I don't have to be afraid to be me. I can be the girl that laughs out the loudest. I can be the girl who sings out loud even though she can't sing. And these people love and appreciate me,
I think it's coming into a safe space because you come from a fairly unstable background where you are in an environment where there's alcohol, there's abuse, there's Then you come into the space where everybody is just, loving and encouraging
and happy.
Yeah. Yes. So now you speak of changes in my life. So that period where you are now moving away from home and what you know and what you've always known into this new environment where there's people that love you. You are in an academic environment where you are learning stuff that you never possibly imagined that you could learn, I would imagine. And your life is changing because by virtue of the environment that you find yourself in. But emotionally, the external environment is one thing, and you're saying you gained more confidence during that time. But emotionally within yourself, can you recall how you were transitioning as well internally?
Internally, when we move to changes in my life, I feel safe, I feel okay, I feel loved and all that. I feel as much as it's funny because one of my varsity friends had just bought the book and she was reading it. So she comes to me and says, but you never even shared any of this with us, your childhood and whatever. I'm like, I wasn't this person then. So sharing meant something totally different at that time than it does now. So I'm not surprised that you're shocked by some of the facts that you're finding from the book. Mm-hmm. So then, as much as I was in this safe space, I'm loved and all that, I never revealed who truly I was, the broken part of me, the broken side of me. It was very much well covered. Now, changes in my life, I'm done with my varsity. I have graduated my degree. I've got my honors. I get a job. in Pretoria. Pretoria is over 1,000 kilometers away from home. And I have to move to this new big city. And I'm greeted by a whole lot of disappointments. Disappointment number one being the fact that the person who was sent to pick me up from the station never showed up.
Oh, no. Sure.
So other plans had to be made for me to be accommodated. And in all those plans being made for me to be accommodated, I'm accommodated by a man who is 16 years older than me. And who eventually becomes my baby daddy.
Oh my, that's interesting. Okay. All right.
So yeah, that's what's happening in changes in my life. Now you must remember, in varsity, I was this extremely religious girl who doesn't wear pants and who, extremely, I don't eat meat and all that. And now I find myself in a situation where, number one, I'm sharing a place to stay with a man. I'm accommodated by a man, meaning I've violated some rules already. Secondly, I'm pregnant, and as this extremely religious just person, the flow of life. You study, you get married, and you have children. So now the flow has been altered. So I have now to deal with the guilt and the shame that comes with being pregnant out of wedlock, that comes with being a disappointment to my mom, because as the first graduate at home, my mom works as a helper, as a maid. I'm supposed to be the one with the beacon of hope for my home. I'm supposed to build a house and take her out of a situation and all that. But here I go and becoming pregnant. And the first year of my working and all that. So it's a disappointment. So all these changes, not positive changes in my life, rather negative changes that are taking me now back to how much of a not good enough person I am. And how much I'm disappointing the people that are around me.
Sure. And that speaks to the brokenness in you, because the broken part of you is that part that would have allowed that man to be a part of your life in that way, even though you had established these values that I am Christian, I am this, I will not do this, I believe in this, and then a part of you, the broken part of you, was the one that allowed that to happen.
Yes.
Yeah. So
that's why I said when I was talking about the title that I lived a seemingly normal life where people around me would have never picked it up that I was broken. But I lived with my brokenness. So I was a functional mess in all essence. So my brokenness was there existing within me, and I was covering it very well, looking and appearing very normal, doing what normal people do: wake up, bath, go to work, go to church and all that. But the brokenness was there. And if you would pick it up in the decisions that I took, that this person is broken.
And I think it's a point of encouragement for many people, because this is the story of very many women. And I think it's important for us to address that issue in letting people see that some things are not because you really intentionally want to make bad decisions, but there's a root cause. And that root cause is because you have a childhood that hasn't been dealt with. You have emotional scarring and damage that needs to be dealt with for you to see yourself in a way that will help you make better decisions. So sometimes we are too reliant on ourselves to say, yeah, but I'm an adult now, I should be able to make the right decisions. No, but that's how it is. I'm an adult, and we think crossing over from being a child to being
an adult makes you a fully functioning adult.
Exactly. And also assumes that the fact that now that you have a certain number of years, behind you, you should have the maturity as well as the clarity of identity about who you are as a person, because some of those things, they carry on for much longer. It was, in your case, it was just after you had finished school. But for some people, it happens in high school. For some people, it happens in varsity, when they are just trying to be the beacon of hope and trying to accomplish something that is not historically possible in their family. No one has a degree, no one has anything to show for themselves, and yet they come into a situation where they really mess up. So there's hope. There's hope, because here you
there's hope. Writing this book, if I were to say what it did for me more than anything, it is to make me to be kind to myself.
Yeah.
Because when I picked up how much I lived with my brokenness and all the decisions that I took because of my brokenness, I had to sit down and breathe and say, you know what, you've been through a lot. And now I can look back and see where it comes from. None of the decisions that I've taken, as much as there are bad decisions that I've taken, none of them were because I'm a malicious person.
Yes.
All of them were because that there was brokenness that needed to be dealt with, and that process had not happened yet. So it made me to be like, oh, but you're not a malicious person, It is honestly bad decisions, yes, but it's not because they're coming from a very bad point of your heart or whatever, not because you're really a horrible person, but because you needed to go through a process of forgiving yourself, dealing with all the mess that has been left undealt with to get to the point where you are a better person.
Did you at any point go for therapy during these times where you are realizing the extent of your brokenness?
I have. That's what I'm talking about in chapter 6, Flying with Clipped Wings.
Ah, okay.
Now it's 2 children later. I have 2 kids now. I'm diagnosed with depression. And I get admitted into a mental institution. And I have to now go back to first deal with my daddy issues, which I didn't even know that I had. I have now to deal with the sexual violation. I have to deal with my very unstable childhood. So I go through therapy, and I get discharged eventually, and continue with therapy sessions later. And I thought I had dealt with depression. This was now 2008, né? And then 10 years later, boom, depression hits again, 2018. But yeah, we'll talk about that some other time. So it's been a life of bouts of mental illness here and there. Because the first time I went for counseling, I went to actually consult a psychologist, because I had panic attacks and I didn't know what they were until I kept on going to my doctor, my GP, and he was like, I can't deal with you. This has got nothing to do with your physical health. I'm going to refer you to somebody else, because what you're describing to me, you've been here 3 times already, same symptoms. So it's got nothing to do with how physical you are, because physically you are okay. You're fine. You're not overweight. You're fine. You exercise. You eat well. You're okay. Spiritually, you seem to be balanced. You go to church and all that, but I feel like there's something missing in your life. I'm going to refer you to a psychologist. And then that's how I started my psychologist, my therapy, and eventually I was admitted. So because it was a lot, my second born was 6 months old at that time. So at first they couldn't even tell whether it's postnatal depression or what, but it was something, until I was admitted and they did a full diagnosis that you are having a major depressive episode.
So as a Christian, because we also have this, depression will not get you sermons.
Hey, you must pray.
You must pray. Get depression away.
You don't have enough faith.
You have enough faith, girl. Sister, you are not strong enough in the faith. Your tongues are not, penetrating. So tell us, how did that experience, how was that experience for you as a Christian, having to go through depressive episodes where... how was that? Take us through that.
When I was admitted the first time, I Because I'm just I talk a lot and I talk with everybody. And so when I shared the first time that I'm actually admitted in Vista and whatnot, the people that were close to me were like, no, you shouldn't say stuff like that out loud. I'm like, what? Why?
Why not?
And they were like, no, we can say you are in hospital for something else, not depression.
We must lie.
Why? It didn't make sense to me. Like, why should I hide the fact that I'm sick? And they're like, no, as a Christian, it's like you are lacking faith. I'm like, no, it's a mental illness. I think everybody, we have issues, we go through it. I don't think and honestly, it has anything to do with my spirituality or whatever. So I was shocked, honestly, because I didn't say anything wrong with saying I'm depressed. I'm in hospital for that. So when I now eventually got out, and some people were asking me, like, hey, how are you? Because we heard that you're not well and whatnot. And now you must remember, okay, I'm 24. I have 2 kids. And I'm single. So I'm the girl who has a lot of problems in generally, according to other people. I'm that problematic girl. That girl has issues. So now this comes get coupled with being admitted for depression and all that. It seems like, girl, she can't get over her problems. But eventually, then I eventually stopped talking about it. I think also because I didn't fully understand it. But later on, when it happened again now, 10 years later, I was this vocal free person, like, hey guys, mental health, check yourself, blah, 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 and all that. And it gave me a voice to even like talk to the ones who were saying then that you shouldn't speak out loud about stuff like that. You shouldn't say it to everybody. So when it happened again, I was more understanding and more open to teaching now. Use it as a platform to teach others, to say it's got nothing to do with how well you are spiritually or how tight your relationship with God is or anything. If we've got mental health issues, you just have to deal with them. That's it.
And we are more accepting and more forgiving of when you have a physical ailment and you visit a doctor and get hospitalized. And that's normal. Like, okay, your body's giving you a few challenges. Let's deal with that medically, you know? But now when it's your brain, it's like, fix it yourself. Go pray. And that
I said to somebody, would you tell somebody who has cancer, go pray about it? Pray about it, girl.
We have irresponsible statements that we utter in the church environment because I think that there is a lot of harm sometimes that we do, in people not getting well, even though they are coming to church. And there's absolutely everything right about going to God first. He is the creator of your mind, your body, and your spirit. Okay, so He gave you all of those things, and going to Him and asking Him to restore you back into perfect health is the first and right place to go. However, with the advantage of medicine and therapy, we can also consult, people who are anointed in that area to say,
exactly.
What? I'm battling.
And God gave us these people for a reason.
Exactly. I'm battling. I'm struggling in this area. There's nothing wrong with me as a person, but this is a challenge that I'm experiencing. Just like people who are disabled don't sometimes identify with their disability. They'll say it's something that's wrong with me, but it doesn't define who I am. And we need to really move away from that stigma, because it's got a lot of stigma in mental health.
Yes.
Where I remember growing up, there was a man in our neighborhood who was just crazy, and everybody, like, he was just talking to himself and he would not wash and all of those, the typical I'm crazy stereotype of a person. And we didn't know how to process that as a society. It was kind of like, run away from him, leave him alone. But
exactly, be scared of them.
Be scared of them. But I don't think there was any genuine help that came to that man. And looking back, it's so unfortunate because it's not his fault. He had a mental condition that he couldn't help. That's sometimes how we are, even with the functional challenges that people have with mental health, because we have functional addicts as well, people who are bad with substance abuse, but they are functional. They take drugs, but they come to work and they try and, get through life in a normal way, but they have a challenge and that needs to be dealt with. But because as a society, we stereotype and we stigmatize people who have challenges that are mentally, or come in a mental form, then we really have a big problem. But you moved past that, past 2018, and now you have your strength and vulnerability. How did you conjure up that strength in yourself?
My strength and vulnerability. Okay, now I have met my okay, we've skipped caged bird. There's caged bird.
Let's talk about caged bird.
There's caged bird. Caged bird, I have met my ex-husband, and my ex-husband, there's a lot of differences between us, education-wise, financially-wise, and all that. I'm the one who's on the upper hand, and my brokenness.
Well, let's hear what your story is before we go to your brokenness.
It's okay. Yeah. I've met him, and he doesn't have a driver's license when I meet him. He can't drive, and he learns to drive. I have 2 cars. I have a house. I'm doing okay, with my 2 kids. And the only thing missing, according to society and Christian standards, is a man in my life. A father figure to my children. And for me to be considered stable, I need to get married. Okay, I give in to the press. I'm turning 30 the year I meet him. I'm 29, turning 30 later in the year. We meet. And we get married within a few months. We get married, and
whirlwind romance, they call it.
We have a white wedding at his parents' house. It's nice and all that, but there's a lot of red flags that I ignore, and I make excuses for, I remember there was a day he lost his temper and was shouting in front of my mother. He was shouting at me in front of my mother, and my mother asked, "What is wrong with this guy?" And I think it was second day or so after we got married. My mom hadn't even gone back home. So, and I give excuses and whatnot, and I literally ignore all the red flags. And now finding myself caged in this situation whereby, because of his actions, you'll read all about this in the book, because of his actions, I lose my job. I have a good job. I work in the motor retail industry. The motor retail industry, the company I was working for would give you a car, a brand new car, either every 6 months or every 18,000 kilometers. So whichever one came first, if you would hand in your older version of the car, it would be sold as them, or they give you a brand new one. You use it as your own car. I have a petrol card, everything is okay as far as my finances are concerned. I really am not struggling. Comes this man into my life. I lose my job. Partly because of his actions, also partly because of my bad decisions. There's some things I should have said, I didn't say, and all that. One thing you'll get in the book is the fact that I'm not, I don't shy away from the fact that I had a part in part of my
complicit.
If you read the tagline, it says broken pieces, terrible choices, ugly truths, but grace.
Sure.
So there's a whole lot of my bad decisions and terrible choices somewhere, as the story goes on. And one of the terrible choices was the fact that what he did with the company car, I didn't disclose to the company, and the company found out by themselves. And that led to a disciplinary hearing, which was eventually going to lead me to being fired. So I chose to resign with immediate effect on the day of the disciplinary hearing, because I was like, I'd rather go than be forced to leave, because I don't want that blot in my record that I was fired. So I became unemployed. I'm pregnant with my third child, and I'm now unemployed, and I stay in an area that I don't even like because it's what he chose for us. I had been staying in Centurion when we met, and he moved us to Soweto. So now we're in Soweto, in a place I don't know people. It's his home, whatever. So he's comfortable with it. I don't know people here. I've left my people in Pretoria, and I'm in this other side of the town. I am unemployed. My 2 cars get repossessed.
Oh no!
And eventually, the house also gets repossessed. We get to a point where we're struggling so much that we are homeless. We don't have a place to stay because we've been kicked out.
Even of that the hometown, or the place that he wanted you guys to move to.
These are some of the red flags that I skipped or ignored. The fact that he was not close to anybody from his people. He was very much a loner. The relationship with the parents was also taking, and he didn't have friends. So that's one of the red flags that I completely ignored. That why is this person alone?
Manage relationships well.
Exactly.
Friendship. Sure.
So yeah, it's so the caged bed. So it's me finding myself in that situation where I don't really have anyone to go to. I'm facing my troubles alone, and now he starts abusing me. He starts abusing me physically. It moves from emotional and financial abuse to being physical. But I don't tell anyone about this. I stay with my issues, and I'm finding myself as a caged bed, and I didn't know then that the key to the cage was in my head. I was locked. I was locked in, and I was sitting in that situation where I could not share with people. I was he's a preacher, he's an evangelist. Partly I was protecting his reputation. Partly I was protecting myself from the embarrassment and all of those things. So yeah.
Sure. And let's talk about that, because that's a seldom unspoken about issue. Men of God and abuse. Like it's very real. I've heard many stories. It's something that we really need to shine a light on and talk very transparently about, because I don't think that people should suffer and struggle under the guise of someone trying to maintain a reputation in the ministry. People should deal with their issues. If you can preach it from the pulpit, you should live it. If you can say
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, you should be living, the word of God. And there is no abuse that is stated or encouraged even in the Bible. So it becomes a very challenging issue that we are confronted by, where women keep on coming out about either sexual exploitation by men in the church, especially men in positions of power in the church, or pastors themselves abusing their own spouses. So if he's an evangelist, does he have a church?
No, he does like evangelistic campaigns, and what do you call this in Sabbath? Crusades. Yeah. He preaches in the train, and he's that person. He's that guy.
So have you ever gone to a safe place during that time when all of that was happening? Did you have anybody to confide in? Somebody where you can, divulge, even if it's just for them to hear you out, not that you're trying to ask?
I never, I never did. I kept quiet for the whole time. We were married for 3 years when I eventually burst out, and I think that the day I revealed it's the day I revealed it to everybody, because I did it on Facebook.
Wow. Sure. So you went as public as you could get.
I went very much public. So that's the day I everybody got to know. Otherwise, for the whole time, Nobody knew. I never spoke to anyone. Not even my mother knew what was going on.
Sure, that must have been a living hell, literally. For you to be going through something like that, you can't even process it with somebody else. So now you find your strength in vulnerability, because professing your intimate secrets and most painful experiences on a public platform like Facebook must have its own sort of comeback. So how did you deal with that?
It did. Sure. A lot of people on the day that I revealed thought that, eventually I got a job, but I got a job as a lecturer, not as an application developer. And it's the junior lecturer job, which was giving me, I think, 45% of what I used to earn as an application developer. So it was quite a downgrade, but it was an upgrade from being unemployed for 18 months. Definitely. So it was either I accept that I'll be getting that much difference in salary, or I remain and not have a job. And so there's a whole lot of up and downs with the job and stuff. And then eventually we moved from Soweto to Pretoria, where I got now second job as a lecturer in Pretoria. And the physical abuse escalates. In us moving, and it becomes the worst of times. In that time, I fall pregnant, and then I terminate the pregnancy, and I get abused even for that. He beats me up when I'm discharged from hospital. The day I was discharged from hospital, he decides to beat me up, and I now have to find my voice. That's the strength in vulnerability, to say, you know what, you know who you are, you know who you've always been. You were somebody before you met this guy. You were totally a fully functional adult. You relied on yourself even way before you met this guy. So now having to find yourself as if you can't think for yourself, or you don't know who you are just because you met him. So for me, that's I think that's what led to me taking my strength back, to say, remember who you are and remember whose you are. So before anybody else says you are God's, and before you were this abused wife and all that, you were somebody else, and I remembered that. So having to deal now with, first of all, the day I burst out, some people praised me for my courage. And for me, that was not a courageous act. I was not feeling courageous at all when I did it. I did it because I was really fed up. Yeah. And I did it because I really needed to hold myself accountable. I didn't want to go back home and have him apologize and me forgiving him again. We had been in that cycle for too long, where he apologizes, he acts all sweet, and I say, okay, we try again. So for me to put it out there, it was a way to say, you have to be accountable to yourself. You cannot go back to that, anymore. And it was more of, I'm fed up, I'm done protecting his reputation, let it be out there. So. And then let him deal with it. Let him deal with himself, and let I deal with myself. So I had to deal with conflicting views from people, because some people felt like it was not necessary for me to hang my dirty laundry in public. Yeah. And it was cowardice. I was a coward. For me, it was cowardice for me to put my family business out there. Family business is something that's dealt with in secret and whatnot, and call people to pray for you and whatnot. So, but I had got to a point of, I don't care what you're going to say. So however you interpret it, I'm okay. I'm good. Let this person deal with himself and I deal with myself. And for me, that was the end. From that day, I made it clear even to him, like, look, I've gotten to a point where I'm so fed up with your nonsense. If we spend another minute under the same roof, it's either you're going to kill me or I'm going to kill you. And I'm afraid of that, because if I kill you, I'm going to go to jail and my children will lose a mother. Yeah. So I don't want that. I'm that fed up. He had been calling me a rascal for a while. And I was like, I was never a rascal. You created the rascal out of me. Mm-hmm. So now you're going to have to deal with Sia the rascal. And the rascal in me has been having murderous thoughts. I don't want to get to a point where I really execute my thoughts because I am really going to kill you and I don't want that. So it's either you go or I go. And this is the end. And yeah, that's where in my most vulnerable state, I had to find the strength to say it's enough. It's okay. Let's part ways.
Sure. And he agreed?
Not really, but he had to move out because now I had an assault case against him. I already had an active protection order against him. And I was like, as much as I don't want to see you in jail, I just want you out of my life. But if I have to force you out of the house using the law, then that's what I'm going to do. So it's either you live by yourself or you live by going to jail, because I will pursue the assault case and you to a point where you are moved forcefully. So he had no choice but to go.
And the divorce, how did that process unfold? Because you have to kick him out of your house like that. I can only imagine what a fuss he put up just to give you, a bitter taste in your mouth.
Luckily or by whatever, unluckily or unfortunately or fortunately, we never got to a point where we signed. We had the Lobola negotiations, we had the celebration, the white wedding and everything, where the pastor blessing our marriage.
Okay.
But we never signed. I think, I don't really know what was happening in his mind, but at the time when I really wanted us to sign, he was dragging his feet. And I don't know what was his plan, what was his game plan then, but by the time he was the one now who wanted us to sign, it was the time I had seen the type of person he was. And I now became the one who was dragging my feet. So every time he would remind me that I said we must go, but you didn't want to and all that. So I was now having my own doubts. As much as I didn't have the courage to leave, but I had seen the type of person he was, and I was like, maybe not,
Yeah.
So as separating, it was a customary law, customary marriage separation. I called an advocate and asked what should I do, and he advised me, and it was done.
Sure. Thank goodness sometimes,
Yeah.
for not going all the way, because these signatures can leave us trapped and take us through,
Yep.
a long, arduous and painful processes of separating yourself from someone. But now, you moved on from that and you conquered a different area of yourself where you never thought, this is where I'll find myself in life, but here I am, but I am also strong enough to rise above it. So you triumphed over fear. So how did you triumph over your fears?
Triumphing over the fears, now I had to first to be honest with myself, because I think more than anything throughout my life journey, I was dishonest to myself, about who I am, how the level of my brokenness and all that. So I had to be honest with myself, and I had to triumph over my fears. I had to triumph over the fear of being alone. I had to triumph over there was also a lot of moving after we separated. I had to move from a town to a location and all that. So I had to triumph over those fears of what will people say, if you downgrade, if you do this, if you do that. And I had to triumph over a whole lot of fears, even about how I relate to my children, because I didn't want to recreate the life that I had for my children. As I said, that at some point, they had to sit me down and tell me that, this is enough, you can leave and stuff. So I had to now to be honest with them as well, to say, I've made mistakes, I've done this, I've done that, but you don't have to be like me. You don't have to make mistakes like me and all that. So now the process of honest conversations with the children began, and honest conversations with self as well, to say, I may have been appearing confident to other people, but I have had a lot of self-worth issues that I wasn't dealing with. So I had to deal with those as well. But yeah, triumphing over the fears.
And those are very valid fears. I liked the honesty part, because there's a saying that honesty saves everyone's time. So if we were to be honest about ourselves and to ourselves,
To ourselves, more than
to
anything.
ourselves, most importantly, that actually this is an area of struggle for me and I need a bit of help. And maybe this thing is not what I really want for myself, because you mentioned earlier that according to the church, there was something missing in your life. You needed a husband, father over your children, and all of these things. But then those things, those expectations, they lead us to make rash and sometimes wrong decisions about what is really, our path in life. Because if you didn't have that pressure of being a single mom of 2 children and needing to do away with society's what do you call these things when people look down on you and they look at you like, what is wrong with you? If you didn't have the pressure to do away with all of those things, you would have happily lived your life with your 2 kids. But then now you invited even more trouble, if, for lack of a better word, into your own life because you wanted to fulfill an expectation that wasn't even your own.
Exactly.
It wasn't like, I need a husband or I need to get married. It was like, I'm Christian or I'm in the church, so therefore I need to have a husband and my life
exactly
without these things. So that level of honesty is important for us to live our lives as authentically as we can
possible
for ourselves first, without trying to fulfill any social, parental, sometimes, expectations that our parents expect us to have children and get married. Maybe that's not your journey, and honor that. People will always criticize. People will always find something negative to say about your decisions, even if they're the best ones, but they'll find something in there to discredit. So I appreciate that. Honesty. People must be honest with themselves. And once there's a lot that can go right from that point of departure. So now, finally, in the end, you talk about rebuilding. So how have you rebuilt your life?
I'm still in the process, rebuilding, having honest conversations with myself, building my self-love and filling my self-love cup every day. It's important. And it's an ongoing process. And I think it's a lifetime one. I'm committed to myself and I'm committed to having a better life.
And how has that impacted your children?
Sure. It's been a long and tough journey, but we are at a point where we are having honest conversations, especially with the big two, because they're at a level of understanding. The younger one, he's 7, so he still doesn't really understand and all that, but I'm trying by all means for us to be open to each other. And where I've been wrong, I own up to say, I'm sorry. I've made a bad decision there, and then that has affected your life. And how can we move on from this? And ask any questions that you might have, and all that. So I've become that mother who's not afraid to say I'm sorry.
Very important that. And have you found a way to getting them to go to therapy?
We did at some point, but then funds were not enough and stuff. But so I took it upon myself to do the therapy. Obviously, I'm not a professional psychologist,
but parents can be very therapeutic for our kids.
So I've taken it up myself to open the space. You are safe. You can talk to me. You can ask me questions. You can whatever. So we talk.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much. Your story is very interesting, very important. And I thank you for honoring your truth and having the courage to write it as
thank you so much.
And explicitly as you can, so that other people will be able to see themselves through your story, because I'm sure there's more than enough people to identify with one element or another of your life. I thank you for your time. I appreciate you being here. Any parting shots from your side? Where can people get a hold of you? How can they buy your book? Let us know.
My website, siyazen.co.za, siyazen.co.za. That's where you get hold of me. My contact details are there. My Facebook and Instagram handles are there. We can always talk.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So I'll be closing out with you guys right after the break. Please stay tuned.
Zoe Life Radio, the abundant life experience.
Welcome back. Sure. Thank you so much for staying with us this entire hour. And I hope you have gotten so much out of that session with Sia, telling us her story and what she has been through. And if you somehow identify with anything that she has been through and think that you will get, some kind of counsel or wisdom from her book, I encourage you to go out and buy it. Visit her website, www.siazen.co.za, and get yourself a copy. But that is it from me for this week. I look forward to chatting to you yet again next week. I trust that you will have a fruitful week, and may God bless you.
Approaching His presence with praise and worship.
We all face situations where the odds are against us.
Zoe Live Radio, the abundant life experience.